You see this? This isn't just a physical relocation. This is chaos. This is the disrupting of everything that I know to be comfortable. Look, there's a pervasive lie in the professional world that once you cross 50, you lose the capability to deal with this kind of disruption. They say you become rigid. They say you're set in your ways. They say that your neural pathways are calcified and you can't learn new software, a new workflow, or a new company culture. That lie is expensive. The price of believing that you can't change is your own relevance, and you can't afford to pay that. I'm moving apartments this week due to circumstances beyond my control. I'm surrounded by cardboard and tape and the physical manifestation of accumulated habits, also known as stuff. Every single item I own has to be picked up, evaluated, packed, and moved to a new environment where it's going to sit in a different place. It's exhausting. It's a bit disorienting, and it's exactly what the modern job market demands of us every day. The narrative facing the 50 plus worker, it's brutal. It suggests that while 20-year-olds are agile, 60-year-olds are stubborn. Employers, they assume that you're going to resist new technology. They think that you're going to fight restructuring, kicking and screaming, and they assume that you're just counting down the days to retirement, dreaming in your cubicle about the good old days. If you internalize that narrative, if you believe that age makes you fragile in the face of change, well, you've already lost. Today, we're going to dismantle the stereotype of the resistant older worker. We're going to look at why change feels different when you have decades of experience, and why that experience is actually your greatest asset in adaptation. It's not your liability. I'm going to show you how to remain flexible when the world demands it, using the chaos of this move as our guide. Because if I can unpack this mess and find a new order, well, then you can navigate a new boss, a new career change, or a new company. Let's deal with the elephant in the room. The research tells us something fascinating about why older workers struggle with change. It's rarely a lack of ability. It's something called the stereotype threat. Look, when you walk into a training seminar for, let's say, a new AI tool, you're the oldest person in the room. You feel the weight of expectation as all the eyes turn towards you. They probably expect you to struggle, and they probably expect you to ask the dumb questions as one of those age-defined Luddites. That anxiety, that fear of confirming their bias actually eats up your cognitive bandwidth. You're not struggling because your brain is slow. You're struggling because your brain is busy fighting a war against your own insecurity. The battle is on the inside. I felt it this week, looking at the new floor plan and thinking about how to run the internet cables, and feeling a kind of flash of irritation that I like my old place. I can easily say, "Ah, I'm too old for this hassle. Why can't I just stay where I was?" And that's the trap. The moment that you say, "I'm too old," is when you give them permission to dismiss you. You're just validating the stereotype of being resistant to learning and to change. Look, resilience is not the absence of struggle, it's the refusal to let the struggle define your capability. Here's the truth: adaptability is not a function of youth, it's a function of personal motivation and internal drive. Younger workers adapt because they have to. They have no history to lean on. They still make up shit to fill a one-page resume. You have history, and sometimes that history becomes a heavy anchor if it's not used correctly. We mistake our experience for the right way. When a process changes at work, you don't resist because you can't learn. You resist because you remember the last 3 times that they tried to change this process, it failed. Your resistance, it came from wisdom, but it can be interpreted as obstinance. You also have to realize that perhaps the earlier process implementation failed 3 times because the technology wasn't ready yet. But now the technology is ready to support that process. The younger colleagues, they may be right. You see the difference in the context? You need to learn to separate valid critique from refusal to participate based on past experience. The one is valuable, the other one, it can sink your career. Change hurts. Biologically, the brain prefers consistency. It craves the known path. When you're 20, the known path is short. When you're 60, the known path is this deep, comfortable groove worn into the carpet over decades. As I always say, age knows the terrain. And stepping out of that groove, well, it requires more energy than it does for someone who hasn't even dug a groove yet. Right now, I don't know which box holds my coffee mugs or my laptop charger cable. I don't know in the new apartment which light switch controls what. My muscle memory is looking for a kitchen where I could, basically find a glass and fill it with water in the dark. This change, it creates friction, it creates a low level stress. In the workplace, this could look like a software update. It could look like a new manager who wants to have daily stand-up meetings instead of that printed weekly report. Your brain might scream, "This is unnecessary. The old way was fine." But was it? Or was the old way just comfortable? Is there a better way now? You have to distinguish between what is truly inefficient and what is simply unfamiliar. The older worker who survives is the one who's going to be able to tolerate the discomfort in that neutral zone, the space between the old identity and the new reality. If you're 55 and you lose your job, you're entering into the ultimate neutral zone. You're stripping down the walls bare. You're packing up your identity of director or manager, and you're standing in an empty room. However, the pain you feel is not proof that you're obsolete. It's proof that you're growing. And growth, it can be uncomfortable. If you're not feeling the friction, that heat of motion, you're stagnant. You're not moving. And if you're not moving, stagnation leads to irrelevance. Moving forces you to audit all of your possessions. You hold things up and you ask, do I really need to carry this thing up 9 flights of stairs? You need to do this also for your career. There are habits and beliefs and truths that you've carried for 30 years that are simply too heavy to bring into this new economy, into this new way of working, especially workplaces that are adopting AI. Perhaps you believe that face time in the office is the only way to show value. Well, we learned during COVID that work from home that value is actually driven by output and efficiency, not by being there face time. Leave those older preconceived notions behind. Perhaps you believe that your title alone commands respect. That's just a heavy, useless antique. In the gig economy, your output commands respect. Leave the title behind. Trade it in for some actual useful skills that you can bring to the table. Or perhaps you believe that you're done learning, that you've paid your dues. That is the heaviest box of all. To adapt, you have to adopt the novice mindset. This is painful for us. We spent decades becoming experts. We like being the person in the room with all the answers. But in a changing world, the person with all the answers is often answering the wrong questions. And strangely, the person with the questions is the one who survives. You read a lot about curiosity nowadays in leadership journals. You need to be willing to be a beginner again. You need to be willing to ask a 25-year-old how that dashboard works without, of course, diminishing yourself. How do you think I learned all of the technology behind the YouTube and podcast platforms? I watched endless videos by 20 something influencers on the technology and the marketing from scratch. Real confidence is not knowing everything. Real confidence is knowing you can learn anything and accepting that you don't know what you don't know. When I look at my new apartment, this is still my old one, I don't see a finished home. I see a project, something where the furniture still needs to find its place and the walls are completely different for the artworks. I mean, I don't know where I'm going to hang all that stuff. You need to view your skill set as a project also, not a fixed museum exhibit. Museums are great, but they're curated, they're dusted, and they're preserved in one point in time. Projects are messy, they're evolving, and they're alive, just like you. So how do we do it? How do we prove that stereotype wrong? We focus on three pillars. First, there's radical acceptance. We stop arguing with the reality of the change. Look, it's not my fault that some company is about to build a new high-rise right outside of my window. I can stand here and I can scream and shout and complain that I like my current view. I can argue that it's unfair that I have to move, but that doesn't unpack a single box, and it certainly doesn't stop the high-rise project. The energy that you spend complaining about the new management or the new industry standard, well, that's energy that you're stealing from your own survival. You have to accept the new coordinates, learn them, move on, improve. Next, micro adaptations. Don't try to reinvent your entire professional self overnight. Look, I don't unpack my whole house all in 1 hour. First, I'm going to start with the kitchen and the bedroom and the bathroom and move room by room. Commit to learning small things. Try one thing this week, a piece of software, an app, an AI prompt. If you haven't started with AI, try that. Build the muscle adaptation through small, low stakes victories. And that rebuilds your self confidence and drives out that stereotype which tries to destroy you. Third, reframing the narrative. Look, when you're in an interview, don't apologize for your age. Don't apologize for your old way. Instead, reframe your adaptability through your lens of perseverance and endurance. Like, I've navigated 4 recessions and 3 industry pivots, 10 mergers. I don't just survive, I specialize in this. Now that's a story because it's the truth. I have a lot of work to do here. These boxes aren't going to pack themselves. And in 2 days, I'll wake up in a strange room and I'll have to remember where the bathroom is all over again, probably more than once in the night. It'll be annoying, but I'll figure it out and probably have a stubbed toe or two in the process. I've done this before, though, 27 times to be precise. Look, you've changed your entire life, whether you've recognized it that way or not. You survived the transition to adulthood, to parenthood, to the workplace. You survived not wearing bike helmets or seatbelts as a kid, the dot-com bubble, the 2008 crisis, and a global pandemic. You're not fragile, you're battle-tested. Don't let a recruiter, a young manager, or your own insecurity tell you that you're too old to pivot. The capacity to adapt isn't in your knees or in your hairline. It's in your own will and your resilience. It's in that space between your ears. The world keeps moving. You can either stay in an empty house in the past, or you can pick up the boxes and move with it. As for me, I don't want to have a new high rise in my window. I'm looking forward to a new place with much better horizons. Look, I challenge you to make your move on your end. And as I often say, youth runs fast, but age knows the terrain. See you next time from my new place.